An epic creation story to justify the ways of God to man. That was Milton's goal when he wrote his famous book, Paradise Lost. He set out to make an Iliad or an Odyssey or the Epic of Gilgamesh for his time in the 17th century, and he decided to frame his epic around the story of Adam and Eve. Now, this is one of the oldest and the most well-known stories we have in Western culture. It's the creation story. It's about how life began and why the world is the way that it is. But there's something that sets Milton's version apart from the traditional scripture that gives us a completely new way of reading this old story. See, Genesis mainly focuses on God, obviously, and his creation of the universe, and it also focuses a lot on Adam. Eve is important also. Spoiler alert, she's tempted by Satan and ends up eating the fruit. But the whole sequence is kind of glossed over in Genesis. There's a lot of questions that go unanswered. And Milton decided, instead of telling the story from the top-down original point of view, I want to reconstruct this story from the bottom up. I want to tell the story from the point of view of the most hated character, the anti-hero, the epitome of evil itself. He wanted to tell Satan's story. We know he's a fallen angel, and he took the form of a serpent to tempt man into disobeying God, bringing sin and death into the world. But how did he fall? Can angels sin in the first place? Why did Satan do what he did? And are we more like him than we might think? Paradise Lost is a psychological exploration of these timeless questions. And in this video, I'm going to break down what led to Satan's fall in the story, the reason why that matters to you and I today in 2022, and why the scientists that are working on gene editing technology like CRISPR need to give the devil his due and learn from the lessons in Milton's story so we don't make those same mistakes again. By the way, if you're new to the channel, my name is Alex. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. O sacred, wise, and wisdom-giving plant, mother of science, now I feel thy power within me clear. Queen of this universe, do not believe those rigid threats of death. Ye shall not die. How should ye? By the fruit? Deter not from achieving what might lead to happier life, knowledge of good and evil. Of good, how just. Of evil, if what is evil be real, why not known, since easier shunned? Why then is this forbid? Why but to keep ye low and ignorant? This was the argument Satan made to convince Eve to eat the fruit. And I know it's a wild thing to say, but Satan actually makes a lot of sense here. In fact, as I read the story, I found myself time and again on his side in a lot of ways, or at least understanding where he's coming from. The thing is, before Paradise Lost, the devil was always presented as this unrelatable, evil creature that's somehow set apart from us. But Milton uses the power of his storytelling to paint a different picture. Instead of portraying Satan as this larger-than-life, one-dimensional villain, he wanted to present a character that would encourage us to look within and unveil the evil in our own hearts. When God grants heaven to his son, Satan, or Lucifer, is pissed off. He can't believe that all of his hard work, all of his talent, his ability, all of the things that he's done for God are going to be overlooked. Now he's got to answer to somebody who didn't earn any of this. As far as he's concerned, he's just getting the keys to the kingdom because he's related to the guy that owns it. And we can understand that, the anger you feel when you see somebody who's thriving and you feel like that should be me. This isn't fair. In fact, Satan is so resentful that he decides, you know what? Maybe it's better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. And keep that phrase in mind because it's going to be really important when we uncover the mystery of what caused these things to happen in the first place. So this news makes Satan so mad that he starts a civil war in heaven. And book 6 is all about the battle that unfolds. It's one of my favorite parts of the book. Ironically, though, I think this scene has become such a compelling part of Christian culture that I think most Christians don't realize it isn't actually in the Bible. I grew up going to a Christian school, and looking back, I don't think the teachers knew that this story wasn't actually in the scripture. It came from Milton's book. But anyways, let's take a step back for a moment from the war and the fruit and all the rest of it and ask ourselves, why did all this happen in the first place? Milton points out that it was Satan's pride that got him kicked out of heaven. The idea of bowing to someone else, making himself a servant to someone other than God, it wasn't going to happen. And it's true that his pride came before his fall, but what comes before the pride? Remember that mystery element from earlier that I said was going to be so important? Well, this element is the catalyst of all of the other events that take place in the story. And in my mind, it's one of the pillars of Western culture itself. If there's one idea that I came away from this book thinking about more than anything else, it's the idea of free will. But hold on, do angels have free will? I thought that they had to be perfect. Well, depending on what denomination or Reddit threads you follow, you're going to get different answers. But Milton had a really compelling argument about this. Milton Satan identifies himself as the being that's contrary to God. Whatever God is, he's going to be the opposite of that. And that's actually a really good definition of free will, having the ability to contradict a force that demands control. And the reason that's so important, even today in 2022, is the proposition it makes about the human mind. There's this idea of walled gardens. It's a place where nature and beauty are allowed to grow and flourish, but it has borders, and the borders are there to keep some things on the inside and other things out. The Garden of Eden is actually the original walled garden. It's paradise. But like any garden, you always have to watch out for snakes. Satan changes form and slithers into the garden the same way that an idea can slowly creep into the mind. He finds a gap in the wall that's just big enough for him to get through by asking a simple question. Can it be a sin to know? There's this deep-rooted desire in us as human beings to understand and control things. And his strategy is to excite their minds with more desire to know. Milton's book isn't just a retelling of the first book of Genesis. He was using Eden as a model for one of the first literary explorations of human psychology. The mind is a walled garden in many ways, and our free will gives us the agency to make choices about our garden. Our ability to learn and understand is what helps us to grow and thrive. And we're never content with what we have because we always feel like we have to be moving forward in life. But when we're constantly trying to extend the borders of our knowledge, increasingly more and more, expanding beyond the current boundaries of our understanding, where does that ultimately lead to? It could open up the doors to new possibilities and maybe even heaven on earth, but it could also lead down a much darker road. The bridge that forms between hell and earth when Adam and Eve eat the fruit is one of the many symbols from religions around the world that are trying to illustrate this human desire for progress and the unintended consequences that come along with it. And as we're getting more sophisticated with this new technology, we need to give the devil his due and learn from the lessons in the story to try to cultivate discernment and wisdom about what our goals are going to be moving forward into the future. Our understanding of the double helix was the first step we took towards translating the language of nature in a form that we can understand. And now we've gone a step further in being able to edit that script with technologies like CRISPR that allow us to modify our genetic code. And there's other scientists like Robert Sapolsky who are working to discredit the idea of free will itself in favor of a deterministic view that robs individuals of their agency and their sovereignty and pushes them into these genetically constructed prisons. Are we autonomous agents? Are we capable of making our own decisions? Or is the script of our life pre-written in our DNA? The landscape of academia and popular culture, for that matter, is a mess on this issue. On the one hand, they're saying that there's no substantive differences between different people and different groups. Hierarchies are just a product of the patriarchy, and they don't have any grounds in the realm of science or objective fact. But at the same time, those same groups of people seem to be the ones that are leading the way to developing these new technologies that can alter people's genetic codes, to modify the species to achieve some sort of desired, better version of humanity. Milton says hypocrisy is the only evil that walks invisible except to God alone. And it's the combination of these two things, the ability to manipulate our DNA on the one hand, and the idea that we don't have free will and we aren't sovereign individuals capable of making our own choices that could lead us down a very dangerous path. We don't want to fall for the temptation of believing that our knowledge is complete. And Milton's book, in part, cautions human beings about the dangers of becoming authors of our own existence. In the book, God says that He formed us free, and so free we must remain. But just before the book ends, Milton leaves us with a solution to this problem. Add deeds to thy knowledge, add faith, virtue, add patience, temperance, add love, by name to be called charity. Then wilt thou not be loath to leave this paradise, but shall possess a paradise within thee. So do you think Milton has a point? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. This book is one that I'd recommend to everyone. It's long and it's challenging, but like all good things in life, it's worth the effort. And if you like that video, I want you to watch this video I made reviewing the biography of the founder of CRISPR, Jennifer Doudna, or you can watch this video where I break down the 5 books of the Bible that I think everyone should read. As always, thank you all for your attention. It really means a lot to me. Have fun, and I'll see you over in the next video.